Sure.
Sure.
All right, so we're gonna do Dream It, Do It. I don't know if I should yell that because there's exclamation points. We did the introductions through chapter 3. I'm gonna give a very brief summary on some of this, but there's a Sherman song set to Supercalifragilisticexpialidocious about Marty Sklar that I thought was just hilarious, so I just thought I'd mention it. I'm not gonna sing it for you. Marty and Walt definitely were very closely working on the presentation for Epcot. The presentation is in fact what helped to get the approval for Epcot. He had worked at the beginning of the park, since the beginning of the park, and so Walt's death was especially hard for him, and he was asked to write the press release that eulogized Walt's death, which was very unexpected because he had no idea that they were going to do that, which I thought that would have been planned out long ago, but I guess he was not planning on pressing away at that moment. I'm not going to read the blank sheet of paper quote because I think somebody else can get that one. That's a good one. Let's see. At the time of Walt's death, they employed a whole 4,000 cast members, and the actual parks accounted for about 36% of revenue. But without his leadership, there was a creative slump within the company. He talked about going to UCLA on a scholarship, and if he hadn't, the tuition would have been $100 per year. So that would have been breaking the bank for us these days. Got a call from Card, which he thought was a joke, about working at Disneyland as the editor of the Disneyland News. Card is a World War II vet who served on the aircraft carrier, and he had certain feelings about the Japanese, which is understandable, which might ruin the Tokyo Disney deal, which I'm sure we'll get into later. It's written in a not as narrative type of way, so I went through it as we went through it. That was a little bit I do have one quote I did want to read. It's Walt when he's acting a point out in a storybook when he says, I go from one area of the studio to another and gather pollen and sort of stimulate everybody. I guess that's the job I do. I thought that's the job we all do, so I thought that was kind of a cool way to think about our job, and I might start putting that in my resume as what I do for my job. And Teresa wanted to go next, so we'll let her go next.
I love that. We'll put bee pollinator, yeah? That's awesome. Hello, everybody. So I wanted to kind of go first today. You guys are huge Disney buffs, but there are a few things that I thought I could help maybe explain a little bit as it jump starts, because this book is obviously very different than Bob's book, right? This is more of a biography of Marty, but there's two huge things that I got out of this book. First off, just starting Disneyland, what they were able to do when there was a lot less red tape, and they pretty much just did it on their imagination. And then the second thing is, in the beginning, they all worked for Walt, which is very different than working for a company. And so it was that transition from working for Walt to working for a company, I thought was super interesting. So, my God, like every single page, there's so much stuff. In the introduction by Ray Bradbury, do you guys all know who Tony Baxter is? Talked about some Imagineers. So Tony, huge Imagineer, started on Main Street scooping ice cream. He did Splash Mountain, pretty much all the mountains, Splash Mountain, Thunder Mountain. He also, and I have a picture of him. Oh man, can you see? Wait. Maybe I need to get rid of my background. Anyhow, this is, he did Figment. Patrick, how do I get rid of my background?
I think you go, I haven't done one in a while for myself. Is it security?
Is it security?
What is it again?
Security.
No, is it video maybe?
Video.
Yeah, it's a little up arrow on video. There it is. Like the thing that says stop video, and there's like a little up arrow on it. Don't actually stop the video.
Oh.
And then choose your virtual background. I think that's it.
Oh my God, you're so brilliant. None. There you go. So smart. Thank you, Patrick. Don't ever leave me. So here's Tony, and he is the one holding Figment. And Figment is a huge part of Epcot. And actually, if you look Figment up and Google, like Figment of Your Imagination, this is the Figment that comes up first. And then Tony got a window on Main Street It's just above the magic shop. So he's been with the company forever and a day. He also did the Halloween tree in Frontierland. So he's been around forever. And then John Hench, absolute amazing Imagineer, worked for the company forever until he passed away. He was the longest tenured cast member at 65 years, and then he passed away. And I think just recently, an animator just hit 67 years. But here, you've probably seen this photo a lot. That there's John and there's Walt, and they built the Plaza Inn together. And then for a long time, John was the only guy who could draw Mickey for Mickey's birthdays. And I actually had this clay with John's signature on it. It's super cool. The story is that when Walt passed away, Lillian gave John one of Walt's sweaters. It was a little orange sweater. And so when he drew Mickey for this birthday, he put the sweater on it, which is pretty cool. So I always tell people, like, you know, God forbid my house burned down, I would grab my marriage certificate and my John Hench. So then the other piece that I thought was super cool, and talking about the blank sheet of paper with Epcot, I don't know if you guys, this is the picture they're talking about. That was Walt's last picture on screen when he was telling everybody about Epcot. But Walt's actual last picture was taken at our park. That was the last picture Walt ever took before he passed away. It was on Main Street in his little car. And then the last thing I wanted to share is on page 8. They talk about when Walt passed away, and Eric Sevareid, who was a CBS newsman, he wrote this letter and read it on the air, and they gave just one little paragraph from it. I actually have it. It's on my wall. I wanted to read it to you guys because it's amazing. A tribute to Walt Disney by Eric Sevareid, CBS News. It would take more time than anybody had around the daily news shops to think of the right thing to say about Walt Disney. He was an original, not just an American original, but an original, period. He was a happy accident, one of the happiest this century has experienced, and judging by the way it's been behaving, in spite of all Disney tried to tell it about laughter, love, children, puppies, and sunrises, the century hardly deserved him. He probably did more to heal or at least soothe troubled human spirits than all the psychiatrists in the world. There can't be many adults in the allegedly civilized parts of the globe who did not inhabit Disney's mind and imagination, at least for a few hours, and feel better for the visitation. It may be true, as somebody said, that while there's no highbrow and a lowbrow, there might be some lowbrow in every highbrow. But what Walt Disney seemed to know was that while there is very little grown-up in a child, there is a lot of child in every grown-up. To a child, this weary world is brand new, gift-wrapped. Disney tried to keep it that way for adults. By the conventional wisdom, mighty mice, flying elephants, Snow White, happy, grumpy, sneezy, and dopey, all these were fantasy, escapism from reality. It's a question of whether they are any less real, any more fantastic than intercontinental missiles, poisoned air, defoliated forests, and scrap iron on the moon. This is the age of fantasy, however you look at it, but Disney's fantasy wasn't lethal. People are saying we'll never see his like again. And just in the first 2.5 chapters, they talk about how the world didn't deserve him when he passed away in '66, and then they talk about, you know, in '74 with the gas crisis, when there was a war. I think it was a war in Israel is the reason why there was an issue with gas. And I remember those days, like we were only able to go on days of the dates that were like positive, you know, like evens, and then the other days were odds, and other people can go and get gas on odds. So I think, you know, we live in a crazy world right now, but I think the world's always been crazy at different times, right? And so it just our role stands the test of time because the world just continues to need us. So that's all I want. Oh, one more cookie thing. This is really fun. So Tony Baxter, in Thunder Mountain, in our Thunder Mountain, at the end when the attraction's ending and you go by that little town, if you look in the window of one of the little houses, you'll see like a, I think it's a little bigger than 8 by 10, maybe 11 by 14, but a portrait. This is Tony, but he's supposed to be like the mayor of the town. And if you go on Thunder in Disney World and you're going down the staircase before you get on the attraction, there's a huge portrait of Tony Baxter hanging up on the wall. So that's him, which is pretty cool. Okay, that's all I have.
It's really cool, and I'm sure you guys know that they do like the Halloween tree thing in Frontierland, and they yeah, I think that was Ray. Is that Ray Bradbury?
Yeah, Ray Bradbury. He wrote the book called The Halloween Tree.
So when I went to the Walt Disney Museum, it's all about Walt Disney, of course, and they have this really cool picture I want to show you guys real quick. The kind of definitely to me represented what like the world felt when Walt Disney died. It was kind of the whole world cried. I thought it was kind of an interesting way to bookend what you were saying about him.
That's an awesome picture. That room in the Disney Museum, I have to like walk through fast. It's that last room and you just sob.
Yeah, if you guys ever get a chance to go, it's in San Francisco. It's well worth it. Like she said, you kind of have to run through that last room because it chokes you up. But yeah, let's go to Judy next.
Hey guys. Don't have a lot to add, although I did when I was reading, I did highlight that quote. Hold on, let me get it. There's two ways to look at a blank sheet of paper, and I feel it makes sense. It's probably something from their working environment, but it still rings true today. Like, it's all about perspective, and if we want to be negative and see like, oh well, this can't be done, like we're not going to continue on Walt's legacy. Whereas if we do see the potential in that blank paper, you know, we're always going to be innovators. On one part, when he was discussing how he had an hour to write Walt's obituary, it makes sense because, you know, I'm pretty sure like even then that he was a living legend in and of itself, you know, so they probably had this sense that he was going to be immortal, even though they all knew that he was a heavy smoker and that he had lung cancer. He wasn't going to survive, but still, you know, his grandeur still gave him that sense of, gave others a sense of immortality. So it makes sense that they weren't prepared after he did pass, because you know, it's just impossible for someone that great, you know. In the third chapter, I believe, I read it like 4 days ago, so I don't have everything quite memorized, but the way Marty talked about his upbringing and that he understood the hard work that his dad put in his career. You know, he started off when they came over here and he was a teacher, and his tenure started later than the years that he had experienced as a teacher. Still didn't discourage him from continuing on, and you know, he retired his career as principal, and he made positive strides, and he instilled in Marty that hard work, which obviously, you know, he did inherit that, and he did see the importance of hard work and putting all that work in. And you know, he was a cast member for, what was it, 54 years before he retired. So that's pretty great. And that's all I have.
Remember, but there was like Teresa definitely remembers this. Can you guys all hear me? Sorry. There's a quote in there about like how he was like cast member number 100 or something like that. That was pretty cool. I'd love to be in the low numbers like that. I'm sure I was cast number 5,000 million. Who knows? Let's go to Jessica next.
Hey guys. Okay, so I was going to do a little review of the signs that we've learned, because it's good to see it multiple times. So we've learned help, bathroom or restroom, where, the I love you sign. You got the like calling, all dreamers, and then welcome home was the most recent. And then we were talking last week about telling people how to give space and kind of social distancing. So you could do social. So these are all your little people kind of swirling together, and then separate. That's one way to do like social distancing. As I kind of talked before, you could do your two people and that they're separating, just telling you to separate. That's really visual. And I think even non-deaf or hard of hearing guests might be like, oh, yeah, we should probably separate away from each other because it's pretty visual. There's also, you could do like body separate. It's kind of like physical distance, or with the P, you could do physical separation. There we go. So those are kind of different ways that you could say that if you notice people aren't separating. Okay, so then for the book, obviously the blank page quote comes up a lot as you read it, and it's just a really good visual way to think about that. One thing that kind of stuck out to me was in his speech that Marty wrote, that Walt was like, oh, thanks for writing my obituary. The quote that stuck out to me was, we keep moving forward, opening up new doors and doing new things because we're curious, and curiosity keeps leading us. When you're curious, you find lots of interesting things to do, and one thing it takes to accomplish something is courage. So I think that was a quote that really stuck out to me, of always kind of being curious of next step, and it helps encourage you to try new things, and you do have to be kind of courageous to suggest new things or to try something different. Either it's been done before and it didn't work, or maybe no one's tried it, so it might not work. So it can be kind of nerve-wracking, but we have to try and have that courage. So that kind of stuck out to me in his speech.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I definitely love the blank sheet of paper quote. It's a good one. We're gonna go with Lauren next.
Yeah. Okay, am I unmuted now? Okay, perfect. I mean, there's not much to say, because there is a lot to say. It's more of like an introductory to him, but I mean, from the same line, it was talking about like probably the most important of all, when we consider a new project, we really study it, not just the surface idea, but everything about it. And when we go into that project, we believe in it all the way. And I don't know, there's not really much to say except for the fact that it really was important to me, because I feel like in everything that we do, you have to be passionate and you have to believe in the cause. You can't just walk through the motions. And so I thought that was really interesting. I'm really excited to read the rest of the book and see what other insights that Marty has, but that's the one that really stuck out the most to me.
Oh, I like that. Believe in it all the way. That's a good one. Very good. Haley, we'll go to you next.
Okay. So this is completely different than Bob Iger's book. I read the first 3 chapters like twice because I just wanted it to sink in a little bit. Let me find my note. So from chapter 1, CBS newsman Eric Severeid, probably butchered that. Yeah, cool, great. He wrote a note that day that said he probably did more to heal, or at least to soothe troubled human spirits, than all the psychiatrists in the world. There can't be many adults in the allegedly civilized parts of the globe who did not inhabit Disney's mind and imagination at least for a few hours and feel better for the visitation. I thought that quote, I kind of laughed a little bit because my mom has always told me that her annual pass is cheaper than her going to therapy. So, and I think it's funny to see that like a lot of people probably feel that way. So, and I think that Walt did. So, yeah.
That's a really good way to look at our job, like, especially now that we're coming back in a very, very tumultuous time in the world. Like, we can heal more than psychiatrists. Very cool. I love that. Thank you so much. All right, Nessa, you are the last but not the least.
Hi guys. So yeah, it was kind of the same thing. I really liked the blank paper quote, and it just like what Judy was saying, that you, in every situation, like you have the opportunity to make what you want of it, and you can make it a good experience. And for them, they can they were able to like create new worlds and imagine anything that they wanted. So I thought that was pretty cool. And then I took from the, I think it was the last or second to last, when he was talking about his upbringing and all that, just how hard they worked, I guess. And even with his dad losing his, I think it was like 12 years that he was working as a teacher, like they still worked so hard to get things that they got. And it was just showing how determined he was, even, and learning it from both his parents. So that's all I got.
No, they were, sounds like a very hardworking couple, especially when he's talking about like staying way after school to help with other kids and things like that. Things they don't do anymore, for sure. I'll go ahead and read the quote. There are two ways to look at a blank sheet of paper, I told the creative team. It can be the most frightening thing in the world because you have to make your first mark on it, or it can be the greatest opportunity in the world because you get to make the first mark. You can let your imagination fly in any direction and create whole new worlds. It's kind of silly, but we have the play right over there across the way from us at Small World, and it's the Mickey's Magical Map, and it starts with a little dot, and that's how the rest of the play goes about. And the cool part about it is thinking about how there was that creative slump when Disney died, and nowadays we have Iger, who's planned a little bit ahead and has gotten us people inside the company that are very creative and thinking about this stuff. But that's an encouraging part, is that we don't have to. We don't only have that one guy, and then everything else is gone for the rest of eternity if that person dies. No, we kind of have a system set up here. So yeah, we'll go ahead and unmute now.
That's a really good point, Patrick. We have that safety net.
Mm-hmm. Which is important, because if we're going to continue being innovators, we can't just look to one person for forever. So, I guess it was meant to be that Bob was our last CEO because he saw the importance of that. It's not my decision. It's not just me who's creating this content. It's not just me helping this business grow. It's a team of people, and which he probably, at the end of that chapter, he did talk about how many times he wanted to retire before his actual retire date. So it makes sense. He's like, let's get these people ready so that they don't just look to me forever.
Problem is, the world's not ready for him to retire.
Yeah, exactly.
You guys were talking about Walt with curiosity and courage. If you look on Marty's wall right here, there's the quote from Walt about that. And what's so interesting is Josh D'Amaro and Chris Tyler both have their 3 C's, right? Well, Walt had 4 C's, and it was curiosity, confidence, courage, and constancy, which is so funny. So I guess, the letter C is good luck in Disney lingo. Did you guys read Josh D'Amaro's email this morning by chance?
No, I haven't yet.
Not yet.
Yep. I just.
Did you see it?
No, I saw it popped up his name, but I didn't read it yet.
Yeah, it'll make you cry. It's all about what's happening in the world right now. But at his last thing he says is, please remember that your diversity is our magic. It's pretty incredible. And the way he starts it off is his team wanted to make sure you saw the note from Bob Chapek, Bob Iger, and Latondra. So he's very he's just another one of our cast members, it's not so formal.
I'm sure Judy can attest to this too, but when I was in the management classes, they were like, oh, like diversity. And I was kind of like, yes, we hear the word diversity all the time, but they talked about like Moana and, some of the other ones that we have had recently that have been like more diverse products. But, it wasn't just about the fact that they were like big money makers, but they actually made big segments of our population that have never feel included. And like, it was like, oh, there really is like a reason for the diversity, word we all throw around. It isn't just some word we throw on. We actually are impacting people in really positive ways. Especially, I think they were talking about Black Panther in the Bob Iger book, how people that were, a Black were feeling represented, speaking of the tumultuous time we live in right now.
actually watched
we
Black
didn't-
Panther for the first time last night, and it was really good. I know I'm so behind in the Marvel universe. It's not even funny. So
Yeah,
I
there's time.
stopped watching because I couldn't. So we're watching them all in chronological order. We just finished Black Panther, so we got like 3 or 4 left. So I'm getting there, but it was really good. Like I finally understood what people were talking about, and it was a really good movie. And I thought it handled a lot of tension, especially societally, with like racism and stuff like that. I thought it handled it very nicely, and it was a good movie.
Mhm. Yeah, we didn't really talk about it when that chapter came up, but like when I saw Infinity War before I saw Black Panther, I haven't seen all the movies either, and it's been completely
Mhm.
not in chronological order in the release dates. But when I saw Infinity War, I'm like, oh, I hate Thanos. He's the villain. He's the villain. Then I watched Black Panther, Fearmonger, like, no, he's not the villain. He's not the bad guy, because he's not wanting the destruction of everything because he's so angry because his people have been mistreated for so long. He wants equality, and now we're like, oh my, he is a protagonist. He's not the villain, because like he wants equality, because he wants people to know how long Black people have been marginalized and how much discrimination have not subsided. And it gives me goosebumps knowing that Bob Iger really pushed for Black Panther to give that representation, to give people that voice, and if it hadn't been for Black Panther, I've changed my opinion on Thanos. He's not a villain either. He didn't want to destroy people. He just wanted to avoid, the extinction of a whole planet. It's just a lot to think about, and just learning that it's not so black and white. Nothing is black and white. Nothing is simple or hard. There's just so much complexity and gray in between that we have to understand and try and see other people's perspective, and it's important. So
Yeah, I love at the end when they're like sitting together, like watching the sunset together. Like rather than like it's, he kills them and there's some tumultuous music. It's like they're sitting together watching the sunset as he like passes away. It's like, oh, like he wasn't the bad guy. I get it now. Okay.
Yeah.
So it's kind
And
of
he
cool.
even
That's what my best friend and I said when we first watched that movie too. We were like obviously we're very primed to thinking like, like obviously we want the Avengers to win and all that, and Thanos is the bad guy. But when we were thinking about it, we're like, if you switch the roles on it, technically we did have a full story with the protagonist, because it started with Thanos, the climax included Thanos, and at the end, like Thanos technically like won, and he had peace at the end. So we're like, that's a full story. Like I can see like, I can see what they're doing there. Yeah, it was awesome.